Oh boy. Jared Polin, Photos.com, and this is a real-world preview of the brand new Sony a7 IV. Now, I literally just got here from the airport because I wanted to film this as soon as possible so we could try and hit embargo and get you guys this real-world preview as soon as possible. Now, where did I land from? Kenya. The a7 IV showed up 6 hours before I got on a flight, and I made the decision to go ahead and take this and review it while on safari, which was a personal safari, but since the camera showed up, what is a better way to test out a camera than in the real world on safari? And that's exactly what I did with the a7 IV. So I spent 2 weeks running this camera through its paces in low light situations, sunrise, sunset, kind of like the Fiddler on the Roof, but not the Fiddler on the Roof. I shot photos and I shot videos. There's elephants, there's lions, there's leopards and birds, there's people. I tried to get a little bit of everything to make it the most well-rounded preview that I possibly could in the 2 weeks that I had it out there on safari. Now keep in mind, the unit that Sony sent me is a pre-production unit, and currently Lightroom cannot open the RAW files. So I did shoot in RAW plus JPEG extra fine, and all of the images that you're seeing in this preview were edited from JPEGs. That's not ideal for me. I prefer shooting and editing RAW. I will go back and edit those RAW files when it does come available in Adobe Lightroom. Oh, and by the way, everything you see here right now at my desk is being recorded with the a7 IV that just came back from Kenya and has a lot of dust on it and dirt because it was dusty and dirty. So yeah, sorry Sony. Now, before we get to the specs, let's go back to the a7 III. That was a revolutionary camera that was absolutely game-changing for the industry. It was amazing for stills and amazing for video. Then they came out with the a7 IV. And yeah, it takes great pictures. The photos look great, but that camera felt like it fell flat to me. The autofocus was subpar, at least compared to what Sony had out for the rest of their systems, and it just wasn't there. Now, when we did a briefing call on the a7 IV, I was kind of shocked. I did not expect Sony to do what they did, and what they did was really good, and you're gonna see that throughout this preview. So here's a way that you could look at the a7 IV. You take a lot of features from the a9 III and the a1 II, and they trickle down to this bad boy, and basically it's in an a7 R5 body, which means the outside of the body hasn't changed that much at all. So you have the same grip, you have the same buttons on the top as well as the back as the a7 IV. You have the same digital hot shoe, which supports 24-bit audio. You have the same EVF as before, and I'm not a fan of this EVF. It is a low-res EVF. It's not super clear. It's not like looking through a window. Sony always talks about their high-end EVFs, and they're like, it's like looking through a window. And I don't even think their high-end ones are as good as some of the other systems that are out there. And this one in particular, when you're looking through it, it just doesn't feel like it's the type of EVF you would find on a camera today. And that's noticeable when you look at the text and things in the viewfinder. It just looks jaggedy. And when you're looking at subjects running across the screen, it just doesn't look as clear as I think it should. Is it a deal breaker? The answer to that is no, but it's just something I wanted to bring up that I noticed when using the EVF. But what is new for the a7 line is that it has a new screen. It's a 2.1 million dot, 3.2 inch 4-axis screen, which is the same that you find in all of the latest Sony cameras. Now, another change that they brought down to the a7 IV is that when you shoot vertical, all of the information rotates. And when you go back to horizontal, it rotates as well, which is a welcome upgrade and update because it makes it much easier to see your settings when you are shooting vertical. Now, on the side of the camera, you have all of the normal ports that you would expect to find, like your full HDMI, but what is new here is that you will see 2 USB inputs. One is for data transfer, so if you're using it as a webcam and you want to charge it, well, you couldn't do that in the past, but now because you have 2, which is better than 1, you can charge with one and use data with the other. That is a first in a camera like this. Now let's jump to what I think is the most important part of this camera, and it's what's inside. You still have a 33 megapixel sensor, but this time it is a partially stacked 33 megapixel BSI full frame sensor. Now we've seen this before, but we saw it in Nikon's Z6 III, which is only a 24 megapixel sensor, and this one hits that 33 megapixel spot. Now, why does partially stacked matter? Because it has a much faster readout speed. Sony says that the readout speed of this camera is 12 milliseconds, which is much faster than the 67 millisecond readout speed with the electronic shutter of the Sony a7 IV. This is 4.5 times faster. The Sony a7 IV was absolute garbage and worthless with the electronic shutter because of all of the rolling shutter that you would get. It was just terrible. That was a horrible electronic shutter readout speed. Now you're at 12 milliseconds. It's very similar to Canon's R6 Mark III, which clocks in around 13 milliseconds. Now, we had no problem with that camera. The only time that you will see rolling shutter is like the baseball example that I always show, or a golf club swinging. I didn't have any issues on Safari using the electronic shutter, which I used for 99% of the shots that I took because, we're shooting animals that are like feet away from me, and I wanted to stay silent, not to scare them away. I didn't lose any pictures because of the electronic shutter. Now, the reason I was surprised to find a new sensor inside of this camera is Sony usually goes 2 generations using the same sensor. We've seen it time and time again, so the fact that they did it here was definitely a welcome surprise. Now, because of the way that a stacked sensor is designed and the speed that you can get the information off of it, you now get 14-bit RAW files across the board in both mechanical and electronic shutters, which is unlike the Canon R6 Mark III, which dumbs down to 12-bit with the electronic shutter. So this time around with the Sony, there shouldn't be much of a compromise between shooting electronic or mechanical. Let me jump in here real quick and let you know that this video is brought to you by B&H and their Payboo credit card, where you pay the tax and B&H pays you back instantly. Now, there's 2 ways you can save. 1, like I just said, you pay the tax and B&H pays you back instantly, or 2, you can get 12-month special financing of purchases of $599 or more. Now, I personally choose to save the tax, but both options are great options to have. Now, I save tax on everything I order from B&H, from cameras to lenses, and even this brand new Sony a7 IV. You could save really big, or hard drives to TVs, computers, and even film for Big Bertha. Whether you spend $10 or $10,000, those tax savings add up.
Low on cash, but still need to get your boo? Don't worry.
For more information and to apply for your card right now, head on over to the link on the screen or down below in the description. And remember to always charge responsibly. Now, let's get back to the video. In terms of the max electronic shutter speed, you can shoot up to 1/16,000th of a second, which comes in handy when you're shooting that faster glass. Say you have a 28-70 f2 and you're letting in a lot more light. Yeah, you can now go up to 1/16,000th of a second, which is nice to have. Now, one thing I couldn't test out just yet because I can't open the RAW files is the dynamic range when it comes to stills. Sony is telling us you get 16 stops of dynamic range, which is up a full stop from 15 in the a7 IV. So when I am able to open the RAW files, I do have a lot of examples that should show us the full 16 stops of dynamic range. The native ISO is 100 to 51,200, and I did have a few situations where I needed to push it pretty high. But right now, because I can't open the RAW files, at least at the time of recording this, I can't tell you how good they are, but the JPEGs did look very usable. Now, one of the biggest advantages of using a stacked sensor is how many frames per second you can get with a camera. This is doing 30 frames per second with the electronic shutter, and mind you, those are 14-bit RAW files all the way through, so you are getting some incredible files and you're getting a lot of them. And you have pre-capture. You can go back 1 full second in time. Now, pre-capture came in handy for me in many situations on Safari. There was a giraffe drinking water and it spits all this water out of its mouth and I don't know when it's gonna lift its head, so pre-capture works there. Or when I'm trying to photograph a bird in flight or about to take off, I go and put pre-capture on because when it decides to fly away, I press the shutter and I can go back a full second and get the entire launch of the bird through the air. That is why pre-capture is amazing. On top of that, the A7 IV adds a speed boost option, which we saw in the A9 III. The difference is the A9 III has a C5 button on the front of the camera that you press, which allows you to shoot up to 120 frames per second, which is crazy. This doesn't allow you to go to 120, but what it allowed me to do is set my camera to H, which gave me 15 frames per second for just general shooting. And if something fast was about to happen, I could map a button on the back of the camera, press it, instantly go into speed boost to get that 30 frames per second. And when I didn't need speed boost, I pressed that button again and I was right back down to shooting 15 frames per second. So I'm not wasting extra files for no reason. So what about third-party lenses? Can you get 30 frames per second? And the answer to that question is no. And the reason this is important is in the past, in those sub $3,000 bodies, you could have your third-party lenses and still get your 10 frames per second because that's all those Sony bodies allowed you to do with the electronic shutter. Well, now that you can do 30, you're not gonna get 30 frames per second with those third-party lenses. You're gonna have to stick to the first-party Sony glass. Now let's talk about the mechanical shutter. You're still getting the same 10 frames per second that you had in the last model camera. The moral of the story here is this camera is built to be shot in electronic shutter. I shot it mostly in electronic shutter, like I said, because I'm out there photographing animals that I didn't want to have a shutter on to scare them away. This camera is fully capable of doing that, so there's really not a lot of reason to use the mechanical shutter, except for those people that are using flash. So did Sony go ahead and give you 2 card slots that were exactly the same? You know, like 2 CF Express A/SD? And the answer to that is no. There's one CF Express A that doubles as an SD card slot and one SD card slot like you found in the A7 IV. In terms of the buffer, if you're using the mechanical shutter, you probably will never outrun the buffer because you're shooting at 10 frames per second max. Now, what happens when you shoot at 30 frames per second with the electronic shutter and you like to shoot RAW? Well, if you're shooting compressed RAW, you'll get roughly 95 frames, which is basically 3 seconds. Now that's if pre-capture isn't on. Now I like to shoot the best quality RAW file possible from this camera, which is lossless compressed, and I'm gonna get much less than 95 frames in a row. So you'll really only get roughly 1 second of shooting before you outrun that buffer when you're in lossless compressed, and that's not even taking into consideration the pre-capture mode, whether that's on or off. Now another issue is if you like to shoot redundant, which I like to do, you have a CF Express A card in the one slot and an SD in the other, that is gonna slow down your shooting because the buffer is gonna take longer to clear to that SD card than it is to the CF Express A. Now this isn't just a thing to Sony, the same thing happens in Canon's R6 Mark III, which is why I don't even put a second card in the slot because I'm gonna outrun it and it's gonna make me miss things. So it's one of those choices you have to make. Now this next thing is huge because it's the first Sony camera to use a Bionz XR2 processor. This combines the Bionz XR processor and the AI chip that we found in the A1 II and the A9 III. They've unified it into one processor, which they are saying is going to give you roughly 20 to 25% better battery life because they're combining it into one. This is fantastic because you now have the AI chip built in along with the processor. I do expect that potentially in the future A1 IIs or the future A1 III and the A9 IV, whatever they will have, might have 2 of these to give it even more power. Now, because of the addition of the AI processing chip, you have something that the A7 IV didn't have when it comes to the subject detection modes. You now have human and animal, birds, insects, cars, trains, and planes. These modes are all selectable and an auto subject detection mode. Now, because I was photographing a lot of animals, there were the cats and the birds and all of those different things, I shot with the bird/animal AF a ton. Now, sometimes when I knew I was just gonna photograph birds, I switched into shooting birds, and I can tell you that it did a tremendous job of finding the eye of the bird even at a distance. The A7 IV could never dream of doing that, and this found it without a problem. Same thing when I photographed animals. Now, what about when I photograph people? Well, because I sometimes forgot that I had animal AF on, it didn't really find the eye, but it found the face. But as soon as I switched into the proper people AF, it went right to the eye. The autofocus was tremendous. I did not expect this autofocus to be as good as it was. It honestly feels like it's A12 or A93 capable. That's how good the autofocus felt to me. To build off what I was just talking about, Sony told us that the animal/bird AF has been improved by 50%. I don't know where they got that number because it felt like it was 1,000,000,000% better to me. So enough talking about the autofocus. Let's see how it did out in the real world in Kenya. So here's a montage of autofocus clips. So like I said, the autofocus has been vastly improved in this camera. It was really fantastic. Let me jump in here real quick because I want to show you ProPack 4 in action on this photo right here, and it looks absolutely incredible, starting with Blue's Clues, followed by Brooklyn. We've got C41, Copper Tone, DeLorean, High C, Kaleidoscope, Mel Brooks, Saltwater Taffy, Thick, and Wet Hot American Summer. But my all-time favorite from ProPack 1, with one click of a button here, we've got Skittles, and it goes boom. But new and exclusive to ProPack 4, we've got 4 custom adaptive Lightroom presets called Face Enhance, Full Body Skin Enhance, Eye Only Enhance, and Background Blur. So look, if you want to speed up your raw workflow or give yourself a great starting point, or also edit on the go in Lightroom Mobile, because these presets work on JPEGs and RAW on the go, we created 14 all-new custom Lightroom presets that you can check out right now at froknowsphoto.com/ProPack4. While you're over there, you can play with the sliders to see the befores and the afters, and if you decide to pick them up right now, they are currently on sale. Or, if you want to save even more, you can get the Grand Slam bundle that includes ProPack 1, 2, 3, and 4, and of course, Skittles is included. Now, let's get back to the video. So that takes us through the stills section of this real-world preview, and I will tell you that this is a very solid offering from Sony. What they added to this camera for stills was tremendous, so it is definitely a worthy upgrade from the A7 IV. So now let's jump into the video specs inside this camera. It shoots UHD 4K up to 60p, but for the first time, it's full frame and not cropped. This is something that the Sony fan people have been crying about forever. Well, now it's not cropped. 4K 60p is now oversampled from 7K without any binning in 10-bit 422 XAVCS intra recording. Now, to shoot full width in 60p and 120, there's a new mode that you need to make sure you have on inside of the camera, and that is called angle of view priority. The funny thing is, I didn't have this mode on because Sony didn't tell us that I needed to have it on. Now, this setting will give you full frame, and if you don't have it on, you'll get a slight crop with noise reduction enabled. Now, keep in mind, you're still getting an oversampled image if you don't have it on. I wish Sony would have told me about that before I went to Kenya, but like I said, you're still getting the oversampled image, so the quality is still really good. This is a feature that should be enabled by default. It needs to be better explained, and that's why we're telling you about our findings right here. So if you get this camera, you will now know to have that turned on. Like I mentioned earlier, we're shooting with the A7 IV here in the studio. We're set to 4K 24p in S-Log3, and we're seeing no signs of overheating. Now, mind you, it's not very hot in here, but Sony tells us the camera has a heat dissipating design, and they claim that you'll get 90 minutes of 4K 60p in 68-degree temperatures, or 60 minutes in 105-degree temperatures. Now, in Kenya, it wasn't exactly hot. It was in the 70s while I was over there. I didn't run into any overheating, but I also wasn't shooting for hours at a time. I was doing a couple of clips here and a couple of clips there. Now, Steven did some overheating tests, and he was able to match what Sony claimed that the camera could do. You finally have 4K up to 120p with a small caveat that it's only in Super 35. Now, mind you, that's a nice bump up from the past, which was only 1080p. And for those who want to get even more slow motion, you can shoot 240 in 1080. Now, you do get some cinema features that are found in the FX series line of cameras, like flexible ISO as well as user-imported LUTs, but there is no open gate. There's no internal RAW recording or DCI video options like you find in the R6 Mark III. Now, personally, I don't find that to be a deal breaker here, but just pointing out some of the differences and some of the things that were left out. Something new to the A7 IV is it now offers a separate in-camera noise reduction mic setting that works with both internal and external mics that can cut low frequencies like the air conditioning or a low hum, or maybe that annoying girlfriend in the background, which I don't have, so I guess I don't need that feature. Now, one thing that is nice about this is that you can have different settings, like the internal can be on and the external can be off. Because this camera has the AI processor, you're getting a lot of the AI features, like dynamic active mode stabilization, as well as auto framing. Now, normally I shoot only stills when I'm out on safari, but since I was testing out the new camera, I also decided to shoot some video. I shot everything from 24p to 60p to 120, and there were elephants and lions and, well, you'll see, so here's a montage. So I had no problems shooting video with this camera. The autofocus worked really well, the custom settings were really easy to use, and the stabilization was easy to quickly change if I needed to get some dynamic stabilization. But what do you guys think about the video? Let me know down below. Let me jump in here real quick and say, do you struggle to get sharp, clear pictures in low light like these? Well, if you said yes, I have a free guide to capturing images in low light situations that you can get right now for free over at froknosphoto.com. Just look for this orange box, put your name, email address in it, hit send it. I'm going to send you that guide for free. Now, back to the video. So what does the A7 IV cost? We know that the rumors were talking about it being around $3,000, if not more, but it comes in at $28.99. Now that's interesting because Canon's R6 Mark III comes in at $27.99, and Nikon Z6 III, when not on sale, is $26.99, but it's currently on sale at $2,100, which is pretty inexpensive. This is a loaded camera, and yes, it's at the higher of the price range when you compare the three, the Nikon, the Canon, and the Sony, but it's not far off, and you get a lot of bang for your buck. But if you're a Sony shooter and you're looking to get into this world or upgrading from a crop sensor or something less, this is a fantastic offering. I think I got some really nice images out in Kenya. I think it worked really well. You have a great lineup of lenses that you can throw on this. This is a great camera. Mind you, the A7 III came out at $2,000 and this is now $900 more, but it's like 6 or 7 years later. But it's a great starting point. Whether you shoot sports, whether you shoot weddings, portraits, whatever you shoot, you're gonna be able to do it well with this. And it might end up being a third body for some pros who are looking at buying A9 IIs or A1 originals, but this is gonna have really competent autofocus and 30 frames per second shooting. So again, Sony kind of surprised me by doing all the things they did with this camera, but is definitely a welcome addition and a welcome upgrade from where the A7 IV was. What do you guys think about this? Let me know down below. Thank you very much for watching. Jared Polin, froknosphoto.com. See ya.